When Hillary Clinton launched her campaign for the president, many thought that she'd have a lock on female voters. But then a funny thing happened in New Hampshire. A 74-year-old white man won. Bernie Sanders was propelled to victory by not just young voters, but young female voters. So what's happening with those women on both sides, Democratic and Republican? Here to discuss, College Republican National Committee Chairwoman Alexandra Smith and Harvard Crimson columnist Molly Roberts. Thank you both for joining me, ladies. Molly, I want to start with you because you had a piece published on the 12th of this month, and you said, you know, I want to be a part of history. I want a woman in the White House in 2016. But you said most other liberal millennials don't feel the same way. Why?
Well, I think there's one simple, basic reason, which is that millennials want anti-establishment candidates, both on the left and the right. That's something Bernie Sanders is offering. He's preaching radical change, a political revolution, in his words, and it's not something Hillary Clinton is offering. In fact, to many, she represents the establishment. Yes, she's a woman, but she's also a wealthy white woman, and she's one who's been at the forefront of mainstream Democratic politics for decades as part of the system that Sanders is campaigning against. I also think that Clinton has more of a problem with women in particular precisely because she's a woman. If women are being expected to back Clinton because women help other women, as Madeleine Albright said, then they expect Clinton to help them in return. And they expect her to help women of all backgrounds, not just women like her. Many perceive that in the past she hasn't.
Alexandra, do you agree? Do you feel like women are sort of balking at the fact they're expected to support Hillary because she's just a woman?
Absolutely. If there are two things that this generation hates the most, they hate, people who are inauthentic, and they also hate conformity. So this idea that we have to support Hillary Clinton just because she's a woman, that just goes against the grain of a generation that's never been told what to do before. So I think that that's a huge problem for Hillary Clinton, and I think that having these female surrogates go out on the trail to try to stump for her and to try to shame young women into voting along those lines has really not benefited her, and I think we could see that through Madeleine Albright sort of writing an apology today in the New York Times, and also Gloria Steinem apologizing as well.
So she is, I mean, she's pulling out the stops. She, like you said, you brought up Madeleine Albright. So what can she do? What is she doing wrong?
You know, I think that her speech on the night of the New Hampshire primary was a start. She acknowledged that she has a problem with young voters. And, you know, for as much as this generation hates people who are inauthentic, and they definitely perceive Secretary Clinton to be inauthentic based on her dealings with the email server and her dealings with Wall Street, as much as they are distrustful of her for those reasons, they also are a forgiving generation, too. So if she really puts her heart out there, makes herself more accessible, talks about the issues, I think that she could turn things around with young voters.
Okay, so Molly, like you said in your piece, Hillary Clinton isn't necessarily her message not resonating with young people, but the message of Bernie Sanders is. So what is he touting that's so different?
Well, Hillary Clinton is campaigning on extending the policies of the past 4 years. Bernie Sanders is saying, no, the system is broken, we need change, and that resonates with young people in particular who are worried about what's going to happen to them after they graduate college. Are they going to be able to pay off their loans? Are they going to be able to get jobs? Are they going to be able to afford health care? He's offering that to them for free, and so that's very, very appealing to them. This is the first time that parents think that their children are going to be worse off than they are in decades. And for Bernie Sanders, who says, yes, that's true, we need massive change, that works much better than Hillary Clinton saying, things are working pretty well right now, let's be realistic and tweak them.
Right. Okay, so let's shift gears. I want to talk about, obviously, the Republican side. Alexandra, we look at these exit polls that came out of New Hampshire, and we see Trump 37% among women ages 18 to 29. I want to ask you, what are you seeing among young Republicans? Are they steering away from the establishment just like the young women on the Democratic side are?
I think it's important to note, first of all, that this is a question of age and not gender on our side, and really with all voters. This generation has gotten it the worst in the Obama economy, and so I think that when they're thinking about voting Republican or Democrat or independent, they're really thinking about who has the best ideas and who is going to be the biggest problem solver for the big challenges of our day. So it's not a shock to me that in New Hampshire, young voters went for Donald Trump. I mean, he is who he says he is in the minds of voters. And young people like people who are truthful. They like people who are honest about who they say they are. And I think that Donald Trump brings that to the table. What's interesting, though, is that if you look at the exit polls from Iowa, you also saw that young voters chose Ted Cruz overwhelmingly. Of course, we don't know the results of the South Carolina primary yet, but I saw one poll that has Marco Rubio ahead. So I think it also says that the race just isn't settled on our side yet, that there are a lot of candidates from which to choose, which is a huge difference from the Democratic field, where you very much have had a national party that's tried to force one candidate down the throats of their voters. You know, we have a wide array of candidates that young voters are looking at and considering very carefully.
Right. Well, I'm sure we could continue this conversation, but unfortunately we do have to wrap it up. So Alexandra Smith and Molly Roberts, thank you both for joining us. I'm sure we'll have a similar discussion as the race heats up. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.